If anyone ever had to question my loyalty in any regard, in any way, shape, or form in life in general, just know that I've been a Jets fan my entire life, unfortunately, thanks, Dad, for 28 years, and they've made the playoffs 7 out of those 28 years and haven't made the playoffs since 2011. Now, for those of you wondering, yes, I did retire from making YouTube content for about 5 months, I would say. The New York Jets are so bad and they've been so disappointing this season that I had to come out of retirement to do right by us Jets fans here. Not entirely, that's not entirely it. I did miss it quite a bit, and this is my first video back. I have released a couple of shorts, but really in the long run, maybe I'll make a video about this someday soon, but I am back to talk more about the New York Jets. That's really the direction I'm going to take this YouTube channel in, is going to be a solely Jets content YouTube channel. That's really what I'm most passionate about, unfortunately. Don't know why, I couldn't tell you that. But talking about the Jets, talking about football in general is just a huge passion of mine. I missed it a lot. I didn't really want to talk draft anymore. That got really old for me really fast. I do keep up with the draft if you guys are wondering. So if you ever do have draft questions, anything like that, maybe a prospect that you want to talk about, I'd be more than happy to talk with you guys in the comments or email, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. I have no problem there. But I just wanted to focus all of my energy and all of my time, if I was going to be making content, into my favorite football team. And yes, I guess you could say the New York Jets have brought me out of retirement, but today we're going to be fixing the New York Jets roster for 2025 and beyond. Now, this is more of a keep, trade, cut for guys that were on the 2024 roster. So basically, this is going to be sort of kind of a 3-part series, depending on how good this video does. I kind of want to do it this way. I want to clean house in this video. I want to go through the entire roster, basically tell you who I'd want to keep, who I'd want to cut, and who are potential trade candidates for the New York Jets going forward. Talk about the salary cap situation here and there. And then maybe part 2 would be a free agency. And then part 3 would be a mock draft. So kind of make a complete roster overhaul for this team. So that's essentially what this video is going to be. It's going to be one of hopefully a 3-part series. So let's get into it. So we're going to talk about the coaches, the assistants, the coordinators, all that kind of stuff first. Not really too much to talk about here. I have listed the first half of the coaches here. This is really mostly offensive. There are a couple other offensive assistants that will be in the other slide here. But you have Jeff Ulbrich, of course, Nathaniel Hackett, Todd Downing, who Nathaniel Hackett did get demoted. So switch those two. I did just copy this off of Pro Football Network just to, get an idea of all the assistants and everything. Keith Carter, who's probably the worst offensive line coach in the entire NFL. Tony Dews, Sean Jefferson, Ron Middleton, Ben Wilkerson, Dan Shamash, and Junior Taylor. Those are the first batch of coaches, assistants, and coordinators that we have here. And obviously in red means that I'm going to fire them, and green means that they can stay. So this is, and I just want to preface this video basically by saying that this is just what I would do. Now, bringing in an entirely new coaching staff, bringing in an entirely new GM and a new regime totally means that probably every single one of these guys is going to be fired. This is just guys that I would consider keeping around. Tony Dews, Sean Jefferson, Ron Middleton, these guys have done really well with the talent that they do have around them. The skill position guys, I don't have to worry about. Tony Dews has done a really good job with the running backs, Sean Jefferson with the wide receivers, of course. I mean, these guys really haven't had to work too hard with the talent that the Jets have at the running back position, with the talent that the Jets have at the wide receiver position. There really isn't much for them to do. Ron Middleton is someone that I think has done a really good job with what he's had from the tight end position. I think he's done really well with Tyler Conklin, and I think that he's a really good guy to have around. This was someone that was supposed to get some kind of interim head coach consideration when Robert Saleh was fired. So I do like Ron Middleton. Dan Shamash, of course, the special teams is always the best area for the Jets, really. So I have no problem keeping those guys around. Everyone else can go. Ulbrich, of course, I had high hopes for him when they announced him as the interim head coach. I thought he was going to bring some fire. This team was going to go out there and die for him. And the team died, but not for him. They just died in general. Nathaniel Hackett, of course, has been demoted to like Starbucks coffee pickup guy. I don't even know what he does for the Jets right now. I think he's the pass game coordinator. I think him and Todd Downing flipped, but I don't even think he's in charge of that. Todd Downing, I think, has actually done an okay job for the most part. The offense isn't spectacular, but I feel like it was better with Todd Downing than it was with Nathaniel Hackett. Keith Carter, as I mentioned before, is probably one of the worst offensive line coaches in the entire game. So he's gone. Ben Wilkerson, really, these two guys, I have nothing. I have nothing against them. Ben Wilkerson and Junior Taylor. It's just they're tied to the old regime. So I'm assuming that a new GM, a new head coach, is going to not really take them into consideration and get rid of them. So the other batch of coaches we have here, a couple more offensive assistants here, and then really the defensive assistants as well. And this is going to be quick. Really, the only person I want to bring back is Brant Boyer. I think he's been one of the best special teams coordinators in the NFL for a really, really long time. And I don't think that there's any reason to get rid of him at all. He's given you really no reason to get rid of him. So he's made fantastic players out of Justin Hardy, who left, out of Irving Charles. Xavier Gibson is somehow still on the Jets roster just because of what Brant Boyer has been able to do with him. So, I think why bother trying to fix that area of the Jets when that is probably the only area of the Jets that hasn't really been as problematic as the other two areas. So those two that Brant Boyer, his assistants, I'm completely fine with keeping. That is, of course, the new GM. If he does want to keep them on, I'd be more than pleased with that, because I think that would be a massive loss for the Jets, losing Brant Boyer as a special teams coordinator. The Jets have had, I think they went, I don't quote me on this, I don't know off the top of my head. I think the Jets went from Mike Westhoff right to Brant Boyer. So that's like years and that's like decades of like really, really good special teams coaches that the Jets have had. So why don't we just keep one thing that has been going well for us? Let's just keep that intact. So we're going to look at free agents that the Jets have currently on the roster that will not be on the team once the NFL season, once the NFL year has commenced. I don't know when the new NFL season technically starts. Was like the second week of March or something like that. But these players are no longer under contract with the Jets once the new league year starts. So these numbers could potentially be skewed. I did not get these numbers from Over the Cap. So I know that some websites do have different numbers, but let's just use these that I found. I actually completely forgot about Over the Cap until after I made all these graphics. So if there's any discrepancies, I will change the numbers and I will pin them in the pinned comment, the first comment below. But cap space before cuts, $31.5 million, which is 21st in the league, 6.1 million dead cap coming over into 2025. And the Jets have 20 free agents on the roster, 17 unrestricted free agents and 3 restricted free agents. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at the free agents here. We'll run down the list. Hassan Reddick, who has been an absolute waste of life for the Jets. DJ Reed, Tyler Conklin, Morgan Moses, Tyron Smith can be shot into the sun. Javon Kinlaw, Solomon Thomas, Ashton Davis, Wes Schweitzer, Lekai Fotu, Isaiah Oliver, Chuck Clark, Kenny Yeboah, Malik Taylor, Jamian Sherwood, Brandon Eccles, Jalen Mills, and the 3 restricted free agents are Xavier Newman, Irvin Charles, and Tony Adams. Now, there are some really big time players here. So the way that I'm going to break this down is the first slide that you're going to see after this is guys that I would want to retain, guys that I want to see in Jets uniform next year. So we're going to go with that here. So the free agents that I would like to retain, it's going to be Tyler Conklin is going to be number 1 here for me. I think still at 29 years old, I think he's been like one of the constants in the Jets offense for the past, how long has he been with the Jets now? 3 years, I would say. 3 or 4 years. I know it's at least 3, but I think Conklin has been a fine tight end for the Jets. Now, this is also kind of a backup plan because you have Tyler Conklin on the roster. You also saw that Kenny Yeboah is a free agent. And then Jeremy Ruckert is whatever you want to call Jeremy Ruckert. So there's 2 free agent tight ends, and then you have Jeremy Ruckert. So I think it's going to be pretty much a necessity to bring back Tyler Conklin. I don't think he's going to be someone that's going to be super expensive. So someone that you could count on for about 50 catches and about 500 to 600 receiving yards from the tight end position, I think that's more than fine. I would definitely bring him back, 1 to 2 year contract. But this is a loaded tight end class as well. So again, I wouldn't mind seeing Tyler Conklin come back on a short-term deal and just be kind of like a safety blanket for whoever the quarterback is for the New York Jets next year. Morgan Moses is a guy that I'm a little 50-50 on here. I think that when he plays, I think he's very good, but he is a little injury prone. He's also 34 years old, but we've seen with top offensive linemen in the NFL that age just is kind of really a number. I feel like once you get more closer to like 36, 37, that's when you should really consider retirement. But If Moses wants to come back in more of a reserved or a 1 year, you know, contract, something like that, maybe like a prove it deal, just to be really good depth because we've seen how many injuries the Jets have had on the offensive line for countless amounts of years. So if he wants to come back as someone that probably isn't going to start at right tackle, but just to have, I'd be more than welcome to having him back. That's why it's a 50-50 because I don't know at 34 years old if Morgan Moses is going to be on board with coming back in a reserve role. When healthy, he might still have a little bit more in the tank, but that's really all I could see him coming back for. Javon Kinlaw, I think, was the best of a bad situation. I think the Jets, besides for Quinn and Williams, I think the Jets defensive tackles were absolutely abhorrent this year. I think everyone was really bad in their own way, shape, or form. I think Leonard Taylor was like the only exception, undrafted free agent. I thought he was pretty much excellent for the expectations. Kinlaw was okay. I believe he was like 30th overall in pressures for interior defensive lineman, which is actually pretty solid. If you break it down, that's, one of a starting defensive tackle in the NFL. 27 years old. Again, there's a lot of defensive tackles that are free agents for the Jets this year. Quinnen is your man. Obviously, he's going to be double teamed all the time. I think Javon Kinlaw is brought back as someone that will be able to start or be very solid rotational depth. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think he wasn't worth the money. I believe he was brought in on a 1 year, $14 million contract. Maybe something along the lines of, the Jets are kind of strapped for cash here. 1 year, $8 million, 1 year, $10 million with some incentives, something like that, a more incentive-based contract. I feel like that would be more than fine. Isaiah Oliver is someone that I would love to see back for the Jets as well. Kind of bounced around the league in his career, but had a very, very nice season for the Jets. Someone that is not afraid to step in and play nickel if he has to. He's a safety by trade. Also someone that can blitz as well. I really thought he was fantastic throughout the season for the Jets, and I wouldn't mind seeing him back. It's probably not going to be very expensive. Again, another position for the Jets that has a lot of uncertainty, both really. The safety position and the cornerback position going forward is a lot of question marks. Kenny Yeboah, again, someone that I mentioned, that's going to be a super cheap contract to bring back. Someone that could easily be your tight end number 3. He's kind of come alive, and by come alive, I mean like he's caught a touchdown and has saw a little bit more playing time this year, but this is the most we've ever seen of Kenny Yeboah in a Jets jersey, and he's been on the Jets for quite some time now. 3 or 4 years, I'd say he's been a Jet, and I don't mind Yeboah at all. Like I said, as someone that's going to be depth, that's going to be your tight end number 3 probably. At 26 years old, don't mind seeing him come back as well. Jamian Sherwood is my absolute priority this offseason. That is someone that you need to get a long-term extension for. He has been absolutely fantastic as being drafted by a safety. He has those safety traits still, but now as a linebacker, he's 3rd or 4th in the NFL in tackles. He's been a revelation for the Jets this year. Him and Quincy Williams together has been awesome. That is something that going forward, I'm super, super happy with if that's what the Jets want to do going forward. In the interior, Brandon Echols, again, really, when no one was making plays in the secondary this year, it just seems like every time Brandon Echols was in the game, he was making plays. I think he had the first 2 or 3 interceptions for the Jets this year, and it just seemed like every time he came in, he just added a little something extra that maybe DJ Reed or Sauce Gardner didn't have with them this year. So Echols, I'd like to see come back. Absolutely. Like I said, we do need depth at that position. Xavier Newman, again, a super young backup offensive lineman, is a restricted free agent. I don't see it really anyone going after him and bringing him in and giving up draft compensation. Irving Charles, I think, is a must for the Jets. He's been outside of a couple weird penalties, he's been a fantastic special teams gunner for the Jets this year. And Tony Adams is someone that I've loved for quite some time. I don't really understand the hate for Tony Adams that a lot of Jets fans have. Yeah, he makes some boneheaded plays, but again, another player that once he's in the game, he just seems to make plays. The ball just kind of seems to find him, whether he's punching it out, recovering fumbles, interceptions, whatever it may be. I think Tony Adams is someone that I'm more than comfortable bringing back this offseason. And then we go with the guys that I want to walk. So Hassan Reddick, I don't have to tell you fellow Jets fans why Hassan Reddick needs to walk. A half a sack this season. I think he is the only... I saw some kind of crazy stat the other day that it was like Hassan Reddick is the only defensive end in the entire NFL that has played like 10 games or something with a team and has less than a sack or something, who has started 10 games, something crazy like that. Like he's, whatever the category is, he's dead last. He's been a disaster. Probably one of the worst trades in Jets history. I'm going to sit here and be honest with you. And that is a video that one of these days I'm going to come up with. But He will definitely be in it. DJ Reed is someone that I was super on board with bringing back, despite the penalty issues this year, all that. I think DJ Reed is still one of the better secondary players for the Jets this season. And then he just kind of went on that tirade after the Bills game saying, I just can't wait for free agency. I can't wait to see what's next for me. So, you know what, DJ, if you don't want to be here, we don't want to have you. Also 28 years old, going to be 29 by the start of next season. So he's going to want a multi-year contract, and for the play that he's had in a Jets uniform, he's going to get upwards of $10 to $12 million a year, and I don't really think that's something that the Jets will be interested in doing. So DJ Reed, I'm sorry, you're gone. Tyron Smith, I don't have to tell you guys, has been a massive flop for the Jets this year, brought in as someone that was going to be the anchor for the left side of the offensive line as long as he could stay healthy, and mentor Olufashinu, and that's just something that did not happen this year. He was an absolute disaster when he played, and he was injured for most of the year. So that is a $20 million swing and a miss from the New York Jets. Solomon Thomas is someone that I've been advocating for the Jets to get rid of every single year he's been on the Jets roster. I think he's terrible. He's been terrible for quite some time, and I really don't know why he had a place on the Jets roster. Ashton Davis is the same way. Since they drafted him since his rookie year, I just get rid of him. I don't understand why he was on the Jets roster. Wes Schweitzer is someone that I guess if you want to bring back for like a super cheap depth piece, I'm fine, but that's really the only reason why I brought Xavier Newman back. I want to make this team younger from the ground up. So if I have a choice between a 25-year-old Xavier Newman or a 31-year-old Wes Schweitzer, I'm going to take Xavier Newman. That's really the only reason why I don't have him here. Likai Fotu was kind of another swing and a miss. He was a low-cost signing for the Jets, but did not play a lot at all. And when he did, he was not great. Signed to be a run stopper, and we know exactly how that happened this year. Granted, I'm being a little harsh on Likai Fotu. I think he played like 1 or 2 games and then went straight back to IR. He started the year on IR, and then I think he went right back, but he was not great when he was in the Jets uniform anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Chuck Clark is someone that I think has played pretty well this year as well, but again, 29 years old, coming off of an injury-prone tenure with the Jets. Not really too keen on bringing him back. Malik Taylor is someone that I just, I'm not going to waste money bringing back. And Jalen Mills is someone that when he was all over the field for the Jets when he was healthy, but on IR for quite some time now. Again, 30 years old, someone that I'm not too keen on bringing back. So I believe I accidentally split this right down the middle where I think I had 10 guys I want to bring back and 10 guys that are going to walk. But really, the reason for this is you might see some of these names and say, oh, why don't you bring them back? They're probably going to be low cost. I want to kind of strip this roster from the ground up and just kind of start to rebuild. Like I feel like the Jets don't ever rebuild the correct way. The Jets kind of throw shit at a wall and hope it sticks, and then add a couple of aging veterans that used to be good. And then they're like, well, this is our rebuild. Like, we're going to have some really good old players play for us and let the young guys kind of figure it out. And that never works out. I think you just need to kind of strip this roster down to the bare bones. Whoever comes in is going to have an absolute task ahead of them. And Woody Johnson needs to be patient. You need to give the next GM at least 2 to 3 years to build this roster to be where it is, because this roster needs to be stripped. I'm stripping it down, but I'm not stripping it down to the bare bones like it probably should be. But we're going to get into that. But yes, I do think this roster needs to be stripped down. This needs to be a full-blown rebuild going into 2025. And, just kind of start. It's going to be another couple of years of the Jets really being terrible. But you know what? The Jets are sitting at 4-12 right now with the roster that they have. They could probably go 4-13 next year with a bare bones roster. So I'd rather just do that. We're going to look at players that I absolutely think are returning next year. No question about it. Garrett Wilson, I do have an asterisk next to. We will get to that in a little while. John Simpson, I think, was the best offensive lineman for the Jets this year. Elijah Vera Tucker, of course, when he's healthy, is really good. Joe Tippmann took a massive step this year. Olufashinu looks like a franchise caliber left tackle. Tyrod Taylor, I think, is one of, if not the best backup quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and he's under contract for another year, so I think that's very, very valuable. Will McDonald has made me eat my words. If you guys remember, on 2023 draft night, I was livid with the Jets picking Will McDonald. I thought that it was a complete waste of a pick, and it was kind of a panic pick. Once they saw Broderick Jones go off the board, they were like, oh my God, we're just going to take Will McDonald. And it has worked out so far. Jermaine Johnson devastating injury for him this year. I really expected him to have a massive 2024. It looks like he is working his absolute ass off to come back and be a all-pro in 2025. So I'm super excited for that. Quinton Williams, obviously. Quincy Williams, obviously. Sauce Gardner, of course. And Breece Hall with an asterisk next to his name. We will get to that in a little bit as well. But really, there's 4 huge extensions that have to come relatively soon on this left side here. Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall are guys that are probably going to want extensions rather soon. And my thing is, one of these guys is probably going to have to go. To pay these guys going forward past 2025, you're not going to be able to retain all these guys for the money that they're going to want. One of these guys is going to be the odd man out. Who that is, we'll see potentially later on in the video. But on the other side, these are younger players that definitely deserve a spot on the roster next year that I think could potentially be young studs or just valuable depth pieces. Malachi Corley, I feel like we really just didn't get to see a lot of at all this past year. I was super high on him going into the draft, and I still think he could be a very, very valuable piece for the Jets going forward. Jake Hansen, again, a 23-year-old backup interior offensive lineman, perfect for me. Actually, when he was in the game, it's funny, I believe I looked at his PFF rating last week. He had like an 82 pass blocking grade and like a 26 run blocking grade. So it actually averaged out to be a pretty solid overall PFF grade, but just one side was great, one side was terrible. But again, young depth is exactly what I'm looking for. Carter Warren kind of falls in that same prospect as well. Braylon Allen, I'll be honest with you, between the two, I thought Isaiah Davis was much more impressive than Braylon Allen was this past year. Braylon Allen kind of started off the year super hot, and everyone was like, oh my God, the Jets have the next best young duo in the NFL with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. And, you know, he kind of tailed off there for a little while. And I think Isaiah Davis really picked up the slack there. I really like what the South Dakota State prospect has to offer. These two guys are going to be mainstays on the roster for quite some time. Eric Watts, I think, in his limited role played very well. I mentioned Leonard Taylor before. I think he was fantastic. Sam Egovin, I think that's how you say his last name, and I hear him all the time on the TV, and that's just one of those names. If you guys have been fans of this channel for a long time, you know I'm terrible with pronouncing names, and that is just one of the names that even when I hear it, I just can't pronounce. But he stepped in and started a couple games for the Jets this year. I think he's very valuable depth for them. Quantez Stiggers as well as someone that is just a really young player that has to adapt to the NFL game. And of course, Thomas Hennessy, our long snapper, no reason to get rid of him. Now, these are potential hopeful cuts and what we will be saving if we do cut them. Xavier Gipson is someone that I feel like Jets Nation is very torn on, where some people kind of just relive that Buffalo Bills walk-off touchdown in overtime at the beginning of last year and don't really see that he's not really that great of a returner, and he offered absolutely nothing in the wide receiver department this year. Does he even have a catch? Does he even have 5 catches? I don't even know, to be quite honest with you, how many catches he does have. Max Mitchell, every time he's in the game, he is absolutely terrible. You know, we could save $1.1 million getting rid of him. I know this might sound like cheap cuts, but at the end of the day, like, these are guys that to me just don't deserve a roster spot. And if I could save a little money while cutting them, that's what I'm going to do. So Gibson is gone. You could save over $1 million. Max Mitchell, same thing. Jeremy Ruckert, I think, is honestly a waste of space. And believe it or not, coming from New York myself, coming from Long Island doesn't make you a good football player. Jeremy Ruckert, I think, has been pretty terrible in his tenure for the Jets. $1.4 million can be saved. I think that's an easy cut. Michael Clemens, again, kind of the same thing I said with a couple other guys, Solomon Thomas included. I don't know why this guy has a roster spot. Don't know why he had one for so long. I could save $1.1 million. Even if I had to give him $1.1 million out of my own pocket to be off the Jets roster next year, I would do it. And I don't have $1.1 million. So Michael Clemens is as good as gone. Thomas Morstead is someone that was fantastic in 2023. Awful in 2024. I could save $2.5 million cutting him. I'm absolutely going to do that. Greg Zuerlein, we don't even have to discuss what Greg Zuerlein potentially cost the Jets this year. He was abysmal. Same thing as Thomas Morstead, but not to the same degree. He was really great last year, earned himself an extension, and was god-awful this year. Now, it's going to be a post-June 1st cut, and it's going to save us $4.2 million to cut a kicker. Absolutely. There is some dead cap involved in that. I didn't write the specifics down, but I believe it's something along the lines of like 1.3 or 1.4 million. You could take it, Greg. No problem. If you're going to save us $4 million by cutting your sorry ass, absolutely. Zaire Barnes is someone I was kind of looking forward watching play football this year for the Jets. I believe he spent the entire year on IR. Again, $1.03 million post June 1st I could save by cutting him. He's as good as gone. Now, the couple guys at the bottom of the screen here, CJ Mosley is someone that it kind of stinks because the contract extension that he signed, the 2-year, $17 million contract, doesn't really kick in until after this year. And it's tough. It's a tough cut, but I think so this cut kind of hinges on if the Jets bring back Jamie and Sherwood or not. If they do, I think CJ Mosley is an easy cut candidate because not only are you younger and faster in the middle of the defense with Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood, you're probably saving a little bit of money there as well. But if they don't bring back Sherwood, I think CJ Mosley is someone that's probably going to stick around because his contract, if he gets cut in at the end of 2025 going into 2026, it's a little bit less dead cap going forward. So that's someone that I would be comfortable cutting now as long as they bring back Jamie and Sherwood. And so you save $4 million by cutting him post June 1st. It's an $8 million cap hit towards 2025 and then a $7 million cap hit in 2026. But sometimes you just got to bite the bullet. It is what it is. And then on the bottom here, we have Davante Adams, and this is nothing against Davante Adams. I think if it was up to me, if his cap hit wasn't so high and I could save so much money by cutting him, I would easily keep him on the Jets. I've loved Davante Adams his entire career. When the Jets traded for him, I thought it was a little too late, but I still really enjoyed watching him in a Jets uniform. I just think the money that we could save is just too good to pass up. It's going to be an $8.3 million dead cap hit next year, but I could save $30 million by cutting him. Yeah, Davante, I'm sorry, dude. You're potentially a future Hall of Famer. You're a fantastic wide receiver, and I think you still have plenty left in the tank, but I don't think it's going to be with the New York Jets, but I think we got to let you go there. And then potential trade candidates is the last slide before we get to the main event, I guess you would say. But again, if CJ Mosley isn't released and some team is interested in him, he is a potential trade candidate. You will save $8.25 million post June 1st if you do trade him. It is a $4.5 million dead cap hit and a $7.6 million dead cap hit. So half the dead cap in 2025 and then a little bit more in 2026 if he is traded. Allen Lazard is probably the worst contract on the Jets besides for Aaron Rodgers. His contract is essentially, you can't cut him. Really, if you're going to trade him, it's just because you don't want him on the roster. And even though Allen Lazard started off the year pretty well with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, being on IR for so long and coming back and also dropping like 10 passes in limited time this year, I've seen enough of Allen Lazard in a Jets uniform. It's time to get rid of him. This is a cut, kind of like with the Denver Broncos when they cut Russell Wilson, they knew exactly what they were doing and how much money they were going to wind up eating. I think Allen Lazard has like an $18 million dead cap hit this year and then like $11 million in 2026. This is a player that I'm super comfortable with just cutting, getting off of my roster, and just eating the dead cap. Michael Carter is a sad trade candidate for me, unfortunately. Yeah, and again, I made these slides before the whole DJ Reed thing came out. So if DJ Reed does not come back, I don't think the Jets are as keen to trade Michael Carter. But going into the second year of a 3-year, $30 million extension after really earning it last year and then playing very, very poorly this year when he was on the field, you could save $4 million by trading him and only having a dead cap of, I think, $2 million next year. So that is something that I would look into as well for the future GM. You could probably get something back for Michael Carter, pretty substantial. I'd say you could probably get a fourth and a sixth back for Michael Carter. That's something that I would be willing to explore. Breece Hall. So the last two are guys that, let me preface by saying, I do not think are going to be traded, but it's worth talking about because, like I said before, there's a lot of expensive contract extensions that the Jets are going to have to dish out at some point very, very soon. And I think if it's going to be four of them, if it's going to be Jermaine Johnson, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall, you got to think that Breece Hall is probably the odd man out, especially when you have two really good, super young running backs on your team. I think Braylon Allen is still 20 years old. Isaiah Davis is 22 years old. Breece Hall, let me see if you guys think the same way I do about Breece Hall. I love Breece. I think he's great. I feel like he just never fully hits that second gear. And I know he's been through, knee injuries before, and he probably doesn't want to pop a knee again because it's probably game over for him if he does. But I feel like there were so many runs this year that he could have broken off for a touchdown that he just didn't. I don't know. There's something about Brees Hall this year that just doesn't seem 100% right with me. And to be quite honest with you, with what I saw from Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen, I'm pretty comfortable with trading him, to be honest with you. If that notification came across my phone, I wouldn't necessarily be that surprised. I don't know what you'd be able to really get back for him, but trading him before you give him a massive extension is something that I would super consider if I was a new Jets GM. I don't think he's going to get traded. I'm just saying it's something that a GM is probably going to consider, especially since he's one of the better young running backs in football and you're going to have to pay him soon. Would you either pay him and then you're stuck with him, or before he wants that massive contract that you're not going to give him, trade him and get at least something back from him? That's the way that I always kind of think of things. And then, of course, we're going to speak about Garrett Wilson. Again, the rumors are coming out that Garrett Wilson, if Aaron Rodgers is retained for the 2025 season, Garrett Wilson is going to request a trade. That's really the only reason why I brought him up here. If it was up to me, Garrett Wilson would be absolutely untouchable. And for all we know, he is untouchable. I'm just saying I have to talk about it because it was brought up. But yeah, Garrett Wilson being traded, I can't see happening. But at the same time, he's going to require a massive extension. This is one of the most talented receivers that the Jets have ever had in their entire history. 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. I know 1,000 yards isn't as high of a benchmark as it used to be, but 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons with some pretty uncertain quarterback play throughout those 3 seasons. I think that warrants, he's 24 years old. Give him a 5-year contract. Give him $30 million. Give him more. Give him what he wants. This is your franchise wide receiver, whether you like it or not. This guy is awesome. He makes some incredible catches. He's a fantastic football player. If I have to make the choice between, if we're staring at this screen and I got to make the choice between Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall, I think 99 out of 100 Jets fans are going to say, yes, give me Garrett Wilson over Brees Hall, 100%. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think it's just really coming down to money. I don't really think Garrett Wilson cares about Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback, despite all the terrible reports we've heard that, Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson haven't spoken since like week 7 or whatever it may be. At the end of the day, Garrett Wilson is still 6th in the NFL in targets. I'm pretty sure it's like 4th or 6th, one of those two. So he's gotten his share this year. He doesn't have to worry about getting targeted. But be that as it may, we had to talk about it because Garrett Wilson, the reports have come out that Garrett Wilson is not happy and he will be requesting a trade if Aaron Rodgers is retained. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, that comes to our last slide here. What do you do with Aaron Rodgers? So I will say my piece, but I want to hear what you guys would do in the comment section below. That's why I'm kind of leaving this slide as an open end. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you want him back? Do you absolutely not want him back? Just eat the dead cap that you're going to have to eat, because I think it's like $35 million next year that you're going to have to eat, and then it's about the same or a little bit less in 2026. You're going to have to eat quite a bit of money. But again, I don't want the Denver Broncos to be an excuse for why the Jets cut Aaron Rodgers and they don't make the playoffs next year. And they're like, well, why not? The Denver Broncos did. Way different run organization. But I will say my thinking is if you're going to pay him, you might as well play him, because I think that he will be the best option for the Jets. It really stinks because the 2024 NFL draft came around and honestly looks like one of the best quarterback classes in NFL history. And the Jets kind of sat on their hands because they had Aaron Rodgers and they wanted to see what it was going to take. 2025 is not that class. I would not be comfortable with the Jets drafting a Jalen Milroe or a Carson Beck and having him sit behind Aaron Rodgers and be the heir apparent to the Jets' throne, if that's what you want to call it. I think you let Aaron Rodgers play in 2025 and you take a crack at the 2026 quarterback class. That's just me. Like I said, if you're gonna pay him, you might as well play him. But if the Jets turn around and they cut him, I'm not really opposed to that either. I kind of sit on the fence when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. I think that he has played much better than a lot of people give him credit for. But is he the same MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers? No, of course not. He's 41 years old. He was never going to be the same MVP candidate that we saw. I mean, he was going to give us great quarterback play for the Jets. Like, you look at Aaron Rodgers' statistical season, and this is one of the best quarterback seasons a Jets quarterback has ever had. That's just the fact of the matter. It's numbers. Like I don't know. You can't skew those numbers. It's just fact. So he's going to give you much more than we've ever seen in recent history from a Jets quarterback. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be playoff worthy? I really don't think so. So I sit on the fence about it. I wouldn't be mad if they cut him. I also wouldn't be mad if he wanted to come back and play and the Jets brass allowed him to. But with a new GM and a new head coach coming in and Aaron Rodgers not getting his way this time, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming back. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. But this is hopefully part one of a three-part series. So we went through the roster. We stripped the roster to the bare bones. Now we're going to go through free agency, hopefully in the next video. And then we're going to do a mock draft. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's so great to be back. And I will see you in the next one.